Welcome, everyone. Welcome. I see we have some people joining. We'll just wait just a second as everyone comes in. We'll just give it about 30 seconds to let everyone in. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining me today. I am Camille Koster with IDRS. I run our youth programs with IDRS, and we're going to jump into this webinar. Let me jump into my presentation, and we'll get started and tell you a little bit more. So welcome, everyone. So we are in a series of teaching Native youth financial independence through entrepreneurship. And today we're very specifically talking about choosing e-commerce sites, and we're also talking about how to launch their business. So if you've not joined us before, we actually have a series of 8 videos preceding this one that explain our side hustle curriculum, which is what we teach in Indian country, to basically teach youth hands-on how to start a side hustle, no matter how old they are. No matter what their skills and abilities are, we find those things that help them make money. So we are IDRS, and we want to thank our supporters today, the USDA, the Small Business Administration, and California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. Because of them, we get to offer these webinars for free. So today I am running solo, and if there's a question, I will catch it at the very end. But we're going to just offer the webinar, have questions and answers at the end, and I'm going to show you basically part of our side hustle curriculum and what we're covering today. And then I will make sure and email you guys exactly what we go through today in our side hustle curriculum. So for about 5 years now, I have taught youth entrepreneurship across the country. So we predominantly teach in Nevada and California, Arizona and Oklahoma, and also in Oregon. We teach specifically on Native reservations. And so I have offered something called the Side Hustle Academy for nearly 5 years now to youth from as young as 11 to as old as 24. And we're actually starting to turn this into an adult program because of demand. So this program is a very interactive, hands-on, experiential program that we offer young people. And I have specifically worked in youth development for over 20 years. So it's something I love and I do. So previous to this webinar today, you know what? I just realized that I did not share my screen with you guys. So let me go back and share my screen so you guys can see what I'm doing here. So previous to today, we have actually talked about many things. And so I'm just going to go over them real quick. I went through this and just realized I wasn't sharing my screen. So previous to today, we have talked about idea generation, how a young person actually comes up with side hustle ideas. We've talked about what kind of mindset it takes to be a small business owner or an entrepreneur. And it really is very different than most of the mindsets we have today. We've talked about idea feasibility. So basically, what is a good idea and how can I apply it today versus how can maybe I apply it another time in my life, or what is not a great idea today because it just may not work. We've then looked at profit margins through a super simple equation called the napkin equation. And for a young person, it's very, very basic, but we've looked at what a profit margin is, how many services or products they'd have to sell to reach their goal, and is that doable? We've then had them build their customer avatar and basically look at their customer market. And of course, we know there can be multiple markets, but really honing in on one customer market, which would be their main market, and helping them understand that. We next have went through promise, pitch, and price, which actually helps a young person create their offer, which is, how they sell. So is it an online offer? Is it an in-person offer? What will that customer truly get? And then the last thing that we talked about is telling their story. When you look at an e-commerce site, when you look at Etsy, when you look at even Amazon Handmade nowadays, we want to see who made this. Where did they learn this trade? Where did they learn the art? How did they get into this industry? And so we teach young people how to tell that story. So those are in previous webinars. And if you haven't caught it, you can go to YouTube and just look up the IDRS Acorn Project, and they're all there. So we're going to jump in today, and we're going to talk about e-commerce, like wrapping it all together and getting a young person ready to sell. So the first thing that I would love you guys to do is answer the question, do you buy online? And if you buy online, do you buy from Facebook Marketplace? Do you buy from Instagram? Do you buy from Etsy? Do you buy from Shopify? Do you buy from Poshmark? Or what else? Do you buy on individual websites? Think about that as we move forward, because as we're teaching our young people how to sell on sites, we want to think about where we buy, because we are a market ourselves. We want to think about where do our younger generations buy, if it's an e-commerce or in-person site. And then, of course, where do our older generations buy? So I just want you to think about that as we move forward. What are those sites that you buy from today? All right, so every time I do any kind of activity with youth, I always do an icebreaker. And so we're going to kick this off today with an icebreaker. So I want you guys to read through these things today and give yourself 1 point for each of these. Have you worked out today? Have you eaten a meal away from your desk? Have you texted a friend? Have you done something nice for a friend or even for yourself? I just went to a birthday party, so I was like, that was something nice for someone else. Have you met someone in person? I know a lot of us are still at home. So give yourself 1 point for any of these items you've done today, and then stick it in the chat for me so we can see what you've done. So as we talk about training youth, and as we talk about either running programs online or in person, this is really important that we are always like shifting things up and adding these things where there's some interaction. So I would love for you guys to throw in the chat how many points you got, and we'll go from there. All right. So let's jump into this session. I've got something in chat, so let's see. We've got a 1. Good job, Allison. Great, great job. Melanie has 5. Awesome. Melanie has done great today. So I'm just going to put a little plug for next month. So next month I am doing energizers, introductions, icebreakers, and activities that you can do either online or in person with youth, because it's a huge part of what I teach. All right, so today we're going to talk about how to teach a young person about basic business processes, how to know where to sell, how to get paid, and to really understand that process of getting paid. We're going to talk about e-commerce sites and how do you get to know a lot of sites in a short amount of time. We're going to talk about what you need to launch as a micro enterprise business, which is what we call a side hustle. And then we're going to talk about that workflow process, because we know if you start selling, you want to make sure that process is flowing well, right? You want to make sure if a customer wants to buy something, they ultimately get that product. We're going to talk about asking for help, because if there's one thing we do know is that as business owners, I mean, I own a business, I can't do it all myself. And so our young people need to know how to ask for help. And then the last thing we're going to do is I'm going to roll over and show you the business plan pullout. So with the side hustle curriculum that we do, the very last 2 pages actually bring everything through the workbook that the young people have done. And they have 2 pages of basically a business plan, pulling it all together. And if they want to go launch, they can actually go launch their business. So let's get started with the basic business processes. So, you know, just like in any business, you have all of these things you've got to come up with. How is this going to work? You know, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do all of this? And so as we go through this, we're talking about introducing business concepts on a very micro scale, but we want our young people to learn the process, because it's not only just the process of small business, but they can scale their business and grow their business if they do it right from the beginning and learn the process. So the first thing that we talk about, that I want to talk about today, is getting a sale. So how do you get that sale? Where is the best place to advertise? So is it online? Is it the community billboard where you put flyers, because everybody looks for your product or your service in that community billboard? Is it setting up at the local market every month? You know, we see that a lot, that a lot of our native tribes have markets that they get together, you know, once a month and sell not only internally, but externally to other customers. So really going through, as we look at a young person's idea, how are they going to sell? So with our side hustle curriculum, we walk through this with the youth and actually, you know, ask them how they're going to sell, have them write it down. We talk about it so that they know how they're going to really take that idea and turn it into a reality. So the next thing is receiving money. So when you're going to launch a business, you have things to sell, you've got to think about, you know, how am I going to get the money? Is it going to be through a platform such as eBay or Facebook Marketplace? Is it going to be a in-person interaction? But, you know, I may not want to take cash, so I may take Venmo or PayPal or other digital things. And, you know, and in places where you may not have that digital connection, can you receive money offline on different platforms? So really walking through that idea of how am I going to receive money for my sales? And the same thing for receiving money. So basically, if you have a product or service that you really need to make sure someone gets a receipt for their product, you know, how are you going to do that? Can you automate that? Can you set it up where you can actually create an email system where someone buys from you and you can automatically send them an email? So for instance, like on Etsy, you can set that up where someone actually makes a purchase. They get an automatic email that says, thank you for, you know, purchasing, almost like Amazon. I'm sure you guys have done that. So next, the whole idea of shipping. You know, if you have young people who are making products and they want to be able to ship nationally, and of course we encourage that, because there's so much mystique right now with Native American communities and art, that we want to make sure that our young people really are able to tap into that market. So, you know, are they going to ship locally, nationally, and internationally, and really being able to walk through that with them and look at the costs, because to ship internationally is a huge expense. So of course it's very different. And many of our platforms that we use and we encourage young people to use actually have that cost built in, and we'll tell them what that cost is. And so even asking, you know, are you going to pay the shipping as the entrepreneur, or are you going to require the customer to pay the shipping? So walking through that. And then the next one is super important. It's just that idea of customer service. So we all know today that everything we do, we get reviews, right? So I was an Airbnb host for over 3 years, and everything I did was based on my reviews, because if I had high reviews, then I would get kicked to the top of the list when someone is looking for a booking. If I had high reviews, then I could become a super host, and that put me in a totally different category when people were looking for bookings. So, what are those customer service practices that will really help young people understand that that's very important part of business? And then the last one is returns and returning money. So, this is something that many business owners do not think about, that we've got to always keep enough money in our accounts that if somebody's not happy with our product, they're not happy with our service, that we can return their money, or we have some sort of return policy that helps us decide what we're going to do there. We have it in writing before this problem occurs. So, maybe it is that we offer repairs, or we will do what it takes to make that customer happy. But just walking through that idea of knowing that these things occur and we need to have them ready to go. So, Larry, I see you're on here. And Larry is someone that I trained with this last summer with his youth. And I will tell you, we did a short version of the side hustle just for compression of time. So our program can be an extensive 3-day program that we actually offer and go through everything the young people need, or it can be condensed if we don't have as many hours. And I was just thinking that we didn't get to hit some of this stuff with Larry. So there's always resources when you jump on these webinars. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is the idea of bank accounts. So when we train young people on the side hustle and how to start a business, we want to train them so that the second that they turn 18, that business is just like every other adult business out there, that they know they have got to file a Schedule C for their taxes, that they're required to have a business license, that they're required to do the same things that a legal entity would be required to do. So, one of the things we introduce is making sure that a youth has a bank account, and many bank accounts, many banks will offer free youth bank accounts, and basically they can use that for their business and business only. But that's something we suggest. Now, if a young person can't get a bank account, and that's pretty normal nowadays, and I'm going to show you guys in the next slide some free online bank accounts. But if that's something that either parents don't want to deal with, or, really want to be that second signer on that bank account, there are great ways to use PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, Cash App, all these other platforms. And so, for instance, PayPal will send you a paper check once a month if you don't have a bank account attached to your account with PayPal. So, as we think about everything we want our young people to do, we also think about, okay, what's the backup plan when maybe they can't do that? So the next thing is e-commerce sites. Do they allow money transactions? So for instance, if you start selling through Etsy, it's something that allows a money transaction, and it will go into a bank account, so you don't even have to worry about that. And then the next big thing is, if you're using cash, how will you receipt those things? How will you give change? Will you always make sure you have change when you're going to sell at a market? Really thinking through every step that a young person may need. So here are some of the free online bank accounts that are out there. And, one of the things that I do with youth is have them search and find things a lot of times for me. I find them beforehand, but I do activities that have them go and search and tell me, what does Chime charge for a basic bank account? And it's $0. What does Capital One offer, if you do a basic bank checking account with them? And so these 4 are free accounts. Now they are accounts that you're going to have someone over 18 to actually sign on with them. So it's not something that a young person could do on their own. But when we're talking about just starting a little side hustle, we would love to see a young person start with a free account so that, if they decide 6 months from now or a year from now, they're going to go work for someone and they don't want to mess with this anymore, it's not occurring, money that they've got to pay if they don't want to do their side hustle anymore. Okay, so next. So here's what I want to just introduce with doing activities with youth in this last year. The last 2 years actually, we've done a lot of online learning. We haven't actually got to travel a lot. So I just want to introduce this idea of case studies to you. So I'm going to just give you a second to read through this. All right, so with this case study, this is something we can do that in a classroom. I would break young people up, maybe put them in 2 to 3 groups and have them read through this and do a breakout room. This is totally possible in breakout rooms on Zoom, and we've done it very successfully in the last couple of years. But, every time I introduce a topic, I want to introduce the thought of the young people thinking. And maybe some discovery before I introduce the topic. Now, will they have great ideas that tell us some of the answers? Absolutely. Will they have great ideas that I've never even thought about, because this is the next generation that sees things very different? Absolutely, which is great because I'm taking notes. But I just encourage you to always do case studies so that they can really do some thinking time. So basically, when I read this, I look at the fact that, Jenna needs to know if she's going to sell on Facebook Marketplace, how is she going to keep up with demand? What's going to happen if she gets 10 orders in one day? Will she be able to keep up with that demand? Does she have anyone else, maybe friends that do this too, that if she happens to get 20 orders in 1 week, that she would be able to do? Can she get the supplies? Can she, does she live in a community that if she basically ran out of everything in 1 week because demand just got so high that she could replenish all of her supplies? There's so many things. And so you're going to hear every answer out there, which is great. But just think about giving case studies that allow our young people to really think and have that time. All right, so next we're going to talk about getting a sale. So, I think that's the toughest part of anything. My husband has a mobile detailing business, and we have gotten it honed in very, very succinct that I know if I do a Facebook and Instagram ad that organically just gets a lot of likes and people seem to really respond to it, I can run an ad behind that post for about $50 a month, and it fills up his calendar for the next 4 to 6 weeks. That's become our regular thing because it happens. So that basically reaches about 3,000 to 6,000 people. I know that. And so just as soon as I post an ad, and I'll post, something on his site every 2 to 3 days. And when that one hits that people are just liking and sharing, I know that that's the one to boost and really share. So being able to tell young people about that, how are you going to sell this? Some people just want to sell in person, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. A lot of our young people live in areas that they have a lot of tourism coming through, a lot of tourists coming through. So they may set up once a month at a market and sell, and that they're great with that. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. So of course, the e-commerce sites, if they decide to sell on that, how do they really know which platform is best with them? And then that basic idea of building their store. So after they've chosen an e-commerce site, how do they build the store? So essentially, when we talk to a young person about building a store, it's about going on and looking at, hey, do you see other sites on this platform that you love? They have the same feel that they want. They have they look very, very similar to what you're wanting to do. The language is very similar. And so I encourage them to usually pick out 3 to 5 sites that really just speak to them and they mimic their site like that. You know, additionally, looking at customer service practices, because for instance, if you go onto Etsy, Amazon Handmade, Poshmark, Shopify, there are policies on there on each of the sites. And so, you know, here's the thing with entrepreneurship. We really don't have to make anything up anymore. We really can look at other things. We can look at other sites, other people's stuff and say, you know what, I like that. That's what I want my policy to be, but I'm going to change it just a little bit. So that's one thing that we encourage. And, you know, if you know your young people, you know that they are tech savvy and they can find that and with no problems. So here is one of the most fun activities I would tell you in the side hustle that I really like. And this is something that we have done for years that I just keep adding more platforms to. So based on the number of participants you have, you can actually look up as many selling platforms as you want based on your participants. And you can, partner people up in 2s, you can partner them up in 4s, just whatever your numbers are. And so this is a great way for your young people to learn about every sales platform out there that's available to them. And so first of all, I'm just going to tell you, by this time in the side hustle, you will have learned what the ideas that your young people have. So you went through this idea generation, you've gone through this idea of feasibility. So your young people have one idea at this point, and they're going to take it forward from here. And so, you have asked them what these ideas are, you know them, you've written them down. And so you really know from a trainer's perspective, what are the best platforms for this? So if you have a lot of people who are going to sell native art, who are going to sell handmade goods, who are going to sell things that they're really going to use e-commerce platforms, you may be looking at Facebook Marketplace, Amazon Handmade, eBay. So, if you had a large amount of those young people in your group, you would make sure that they looked up those platforms. If you have someone who is just going to have, let's just say, one product, and they're not going to have it very often because they just make things occasionally, that, Etsy or Amazon Handmade may not be the right platform for them because they don't have a consistent number of products to sell. Shopify is much bigger in that you've got to usually have a pretty big store that you want to sell 10 or more products on, but it's a good one for young people to look at just because it kind of sets the bar and tells them the difference between a platform that someone that only maybe sells 1 or 2 products versus 10 or 15 products. So in this activity, I assign it out and I assign lots of different platforms based on what I've heard. And each group will actually look up these questions. Okay. So I'm just going to go through this for one of the platforms just to kind of show you how this activity works. So I'm going to take, for instance, let's take Amazon Handmade, because Amazon Handmade is probably the biggest thing right now that we're seeing. So Etsy was kind of that emerging handmade. Everybody loves it. There's a lot of saturation. It's very, very good. And the thing with Amazon Handmade is you don't have to have the big Amazon accounts like you do have to if you're selling a large volume of products. It doesn't require anything to set up, meaning cost wise. And so it's one that we love. Okay. So what are the pros of selling on Amazon Handmade, or what can be sold on this platform? So Amazon Handmade, anything that is considered handmade can be sold. And as you guys probably know, that there's a diversity between what is actually handmade or slightly handmade. But if there's anything handmade about a product, then you can do it. And then, of course, what do they charge? So Amazon Handmade doesn't charge until you actually sell a product. And that's good to know. So for instance, Etsy, they actually charge for hosting your products, and they charge you so much for them being on there. Amazon Handmade doesn't charge until you sell a product. So that's something good for a young person to know. Is it easy to use? It is easy to use, but you have to get approval for it. And essentially, you've got an idea of not everybody getting approval. So most people get approved, but some people do not. Now, this idea of being 18 and older is a challenge when we're talking about any of these. And so it's something that comes up. So a lot of times you've got to have a parent or guardian that will sign off on these. But so the next one, is it good for one product or many? So absolutely great for many. You can sell lots of different things on this site. Is there a price limit or cap? So this is really important because some of our sites, whether we're looking at Fiverr or different sites, may have a price cap or a price limit of items that you can sell. So that's good to know. Amazon Handmade doesn't. So let's talk about pros and cons. So as we are going through this, I will tell you this is all super easy to Google. I have all of this documented for so many of the sites that we use out there. And so it's super easy for our young people to find, and they become experts on these sites. You know, they become experts on these e-commerce sites. So, you know, one of the cons of selling on Amazon is lost or misdelivered packages. So it's unfortunately more common than we think that Amazon loses packages. And a lot of times on Amazon Handmade, the actual seller doesn't recap that cost. So that's something you have to consider. Amazon Handmade does not actually deposit your money immediately. So you may have to wait a certain amount of time for that. So for Amazon Handmade, it's not as easy to track your business as it is on Etsy. So Etsy's one that has some very clear analytics on, you know, what your sales are for the week, for the month. That's not as easy on Amazon Handmade. And then will it require a lot of time to get started? Once again, a little bit more time on Amazon Handmade because you have to get quite a few approvals, and there is a process that you have to go through. So it's actually more difficult than, let's just say, setting up a Facebook Marketplace post or actually doing Etsy. And then the last thing is on that, one of the cons is the people on Amazon Handmade are not really your customers. So when you think about your own website, or when you think about Etsy, it's your page, right? You can dictate what you do. You can put different things on it. You can change things. On Amazon Handmade, you can't. It's Amazon. So what are the pros? Some of the pros is the customers are already there. People are going to Amazon to shop. And so you're just getting, you know, billions of people who look at your stuff. I mean, it's popping up on their Amazon page when they go on Amazon, and even on Facebook, you know, all these ads show up on Facebook. It's very easy. So after you actually get your Amazon approval, you can add different products, and it's very easy. So there are pros and cons to both. All right. So the next question we actually keep for the very, very end of when we go through all the process with the young people, just to see, is this the best platform for you, and what is the best platform? And so basically, after we do this activity, I try to have at least 4 to 6 groups so that we can look at lots of platforms and, start with where are the people in your community shopping? Where are the people in your state shopping? When you look at target customers, where do you hear them looking and spending their money? And so these last 2 questions are part of the process that we answer at the very end. As they have a product or service, what would be the number one e-commerce platform they would go with? And is there a backup? Because, the first choice may not work out. I think we know that in when we're running a business, our first choice may not work out. So do we have a plan B? Okay. So there are additional questions to this. And so we go through all of this. Oh, sorry guys, I think that was the very same slide, just got put in there twice. Okay, so in general, these are the things that we look up quite often, because as we look at young people and what they're wanting to sell, we see a lot of reselling clothing and shoes. We see handmade items. We see some random things that you would sell on eBay. So somebody may rebuild something and sell them, or they may have a service that they want to sell on Facebook Marketplace. So they may have a Facebook business page. So, that's something that is an e-commerce platform that's not on that list, is simply creating a Facebook business page and selling from that page. And so here just are some common ones, but I want you guys to know that when we listen to the youth and know their ideas, we're going to fit what they look up, very custom to what the youth are wanting to actually sell in that community. Okay. So after we talk about e-commerce, we get them to a place of, deciding how they're going to sell, whether it's going to be in person, online, or both. And we've talked about, what those places are. Then we'll be able to dive a little deeper. And this stuff doesn't happen on day one. Obviously, as we launch a business, there's so much that continues to go on. But, next asking that written policies, do you have them posted? Do you have that bank account? How will you get the work done in your business? So when we talk about a side hustle and when we talk about youth, one of the first things that we talk about in the beginning is, what is your dream? What would you do more of today that, if you had a choice between actually going to bed early or being tired and, not wanting to do something or doing something, what would it be that you would do? Because I think we all know that as a business owner, that there are times that we just want to go to bed. There are times that we just don't want to answer that email. We just don't want to return that call. But what is it that you want to do that you're willing to do? And then, of course, reinforcing that idea of how will that sales process work? How does the customer get in touch with you? How do you get that product to them? Are you doing it in a safe way? So if you're selling in person, let's just say Facebook Marketplace, are you always taking an adult? Are you always doing it in a location that's safe for everyone? And then if you're someone who's offering a service, and we see everything from landscaping to fishing guides to different things like that, how will you receive your money? So do you give them an invoice and they pay it immediately? Do you give them an invoice and they pay you within 48 hours? I know when you look at a lot of landscaping companies or even mowing companies, their customers may pay them twice a month, right? They may not pay them on the day they mowed. So how will you handle that? And then the very last thing is, the reality is at some point, a young person will have to deal with an unhappy customer. When I think of stories across the last 20 years of working with youth, it's everything from, I accidentally mowed over her favorite flower and I had no idea, and how do you deal with that? And when we talk to youth, We always reassure them to find a mentor, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but find someone that when these things happen, you know who you can reach out to, and figure out what the process is to ensure you've done the right thing. Because for you guys that work with youth, you know that our young people's prefrontal cortex that used to be developing by 18 is now developing by age 25. So what that means is that if they have an emotional customer who's angry or mad or whatever it may be, they may not have any idea how to work with them. So being able to walk through those scenarios of what would you do, of how would you handle this? How do you, just say, hey, I hear what you're saying. Give me 2 hours and I'll get back to you, because they may need to reach out for advice. So who do they reach out to? So one thing that we do in the side hustle is have our young people write down, who are the 10 people that can help you? Who are the 10 people who are your supporters, your mentors, and your ideal customer? So your supporters are your cheerleaders. They're the people when things get tough, when you need extra help to do whatever it is you're doing. A lot of parents, caregivers, family members, that's who you would turn to. So I've got a son who has been working for several years, and, he asks me all sorts of business questions all the time because he knows I work in business, but I would be like his supporter that he can ask me questions. The next one is mentors. So, when I think about who I see on these webinars, those mentors are probably you. So Larry's on here, and we did a side hustle academy with him earlier this year. And Larry's that supporter when those young people, when they launch that business and they have questions and they don't know what to do, they can reach out to someone like Larry, who actually hosted this. And, encourage your current entrepreneurs in your tribal communities to come and speak to your youth. And if they will offer their time to actually spend some time to answer questions and be that connection in your community that they can be connected to, that's very powerful. And then the last one is their ideal customer. So when we do the ideal customer activity and they create their ideal customer avatar, their ideal customer can be one of the best people they ask for help. So early on, when my husband started his detailing business, he had some customers that were having not only their car detailed, but then they came back and had him do maintenance washes every 2 weeks. And so about 3 months in, they had some ideas for him. So they actually invited us over for dinner, and I took loads and loads of notes because they were giving some incredible feedback. Not necessarily that he was doing anything wrong, but things he could do better. And so that ideal customer, especially if it's someone you're very familiar with, will actually give you real feedback and continue to give you feedback. So there's a professional in our community who makes a lot of leather work. And he made my husband a leather strap to use for his radio. He's a firefighter full time. And when he went and picked it up, we thought we were going to pay a couple $100 because it was very nice. But he said, no, this could be a new product. So I need you to take it to work. I need you to test it. I need you to tell me what's right, what's wrong. Let's get it right, because this could be the next product that I sell. And so, that ideal customer is just someone that you can get a lot of good information from. Okay, so as the youth start becoming successful, we want to see them start documenting things. So every business owner, as they go from entrepreneur, soulpreneur, to that next level of needing help, of inviting someone in to help them, of not being able to keep up with demand, has to get all of that information out of their head. So as early as you can, get a young person to document the processes. Just writing down what it takes to get sales out, what it takes to actually create the product, what are the services, what's required. And then, next, looking at trying to always document and look at making things as easy as possible for the customer. So a lot of times, if we're really not dialed in, we make things easiest on ourselves rather than the customer. But how do you get this information out of your head? How do you really take all the feedback you've received and make things easy for the customer? And then the very last thing is always looking at, is there anything you can automate or systematize? So with all of our apps that we have out there, with all of the systems we have, there are so many free things out there for us to do automated messaging. When I was an Airbnb host, we got scored. One of the things we got scored on as a super host is how quick we responded to a customer. So I had automated responses on every single thing that came in that just said, hey, I'll get to you just within the next hour, because I may not be able to, and it was a whole lot sweeter than that, nicer than that, but it just said, I value your question. I'll be with you in the next hour. But I may not be able to get back to them physically within that hour, but Airbnb, the system was watching the moment. So that automatic response showed that I was absolutely interested, and it didn't necessarily know what I was saying. It just needed to see a response. So as we look at these things, because as we look at e-commerce platforms, that search engine optimization of knowing how the system works is so very important, because it really, it is a marketing tool. So if we are really knowing how that these SEOs work, then our products get popped to the top of someone's page when they search something, versus being at the bottom of the page. And of course, all of our young people know this. They know these things, but because they're technology savvy. Okay, so as we wrap everything up, we always want to offer resources. So if you have a young person who is, super excited about entrepreneurship, who has a dream, who has a plan, they want to launch something, here are some great resources, and we provide them in our Side Hustle Academy. Side Hustle School is a podcast by Chris Gillibo, who we took our side hustle information from. He has a great book called The Side Hustle, and it has over 2,000 ideas and actually about 20-minute podcasts on people who have created all sorts of different products and services, and gives great advice. And then the next one, 2 down from there, is nativebiz.org. That's us, and we have constant webinars and trainings that are all about small business and small business development. And then the last one is, anytime you train with youth, I offer, make sure that you have local resources, whether it's you who knows how to get in connection with someone else and you are willing to connect a young person with someone, or if you have a department, a higher ed department or something that could really get that young person connected if they're interested in this. So we're going to jump out of this and we're going to jump into the business plan pullout, which is the very end of our side hustle. So let me go ahead and get you guys connected to that. And if there are any questions, feel free to put them in the chat at this point, because I'll definitely answer them in just a moment. All right, so our side hustle program is, depending on how much time you have, it's a 30 to 50 page workbook for the young people to fill out. And so by the time they get to the very end, they've answered all these questions. So all they have to do is go back in their workbook and say, this is what I said. So as we look at this, we start with your idea. What is that one idea that you've decided to take from start to finish, and this is your idea. Each of them are asked to create a monetary goal, And then of course they're asked to find their profit. And then we know based on their profit, how many products or services they're going to have to sell to meet that monthly goal. So sometimes they may change it because they may have said, I want to make $1,000, but they have to sell 2,000 bracelets, and that may not work. So then they get very clear on who that ideal market is. They may do more than one market if we talk about that, and they identify they have different markets and are not quite sure which one they want to go with first. They have their offer, so which is comprised of that promise, pitch, price, and then they have a story. So basically, we encourage each young person really to tell their story. Where did they learn their art or craft that they are making? Why do they want to start a side hustle? What are they using the money for? I mean, all of those things. And then next we look at what they need to launch. I mean, itemizing, I need a bank account. Here's where I'm going to go. I need flyers. So I'm going to have to work with somebody that can help me to create flyers. Then they have the platform if they've decided to do an e-commerce site. And then the workflows are simply that idea of from start to finish, how am I going to sell things? How are my customers going to find me? How will I know if somebody's bought from me? How am I going to mail them out? All of those things. And then next, who am I going to ask for help? And then the last couple of things are, what final work do I need to launch? What do I really need to do to make this happen? And then we always ask them to put a date, because there's something specific about putting a date on here. Honestly, the great thing about the Side Hustle Academy is that whether a young person decides to launch a business or whether they decide to never launch a business, they're going to be a better employee. They're going to understand business better, and they're going to be able to actually document so much that they had never even thought of before. And so we want them to actually write that date, because they can always go back and say, hey, I have all the tools that I need to do this. I didn't really need it in that moment, but I need it today, and I can launch. All right, so that's what I have for you guys today. Do we have any questions? So I know we have quite a few new people on here today that I don't think I've seen you on previous webinars. So it may be a little bit crazy for you today. What I will do is tomorrow, when I send the follow-up link to you guys, if you're someone, I know we have Melody and Larry who both have worked with me extensively before. I know you guys have the Side Hustle Workbook, but a really great thing that is happening right now that we have never had in the works before is that we are actually creating the Side Hustle Academy as the train-the-trainer program, meaning that we will be able to start teaching you how to run this program. So previous to this time in history, I have actually went and been the only trainer for this program. And so if we couldn't line up dates, if we couldn't get young people in the room, if we just couldn't make things happen, we weren't able to roll it out. But we have a partner who's actually on here, which is great. And they are wanting to be able to roll it out not only to youth, but to adults. And multiple times. So that's something we're working on now. And so it will be a series of videos, of a training curriculum, and then need some online or in-person time to really do that rollover, to answer questions. But really, we want you guys to be able to do this. Round of applause. Thank you for putting together Train the Trainer. Yeah, so here's the thing, we can only, recording will be available. Don't worry, Melody. Yeah, we'll do it. That's just the deal. We know in Indian country, it's hard to get everybody together at once. You may have a group of 10, you may have a group of 6. And so to bring a trainer in is really hard. But if you can get a group of people trained in your community that can do this, and continually keep it going. I mean, that's what it's all about. So we're super excited about that. The demand was there, but we just didn't really have the time to put it together. But now with COVID, it's been made possible. So I'm very excited about that. Okay, so yes, so Melody, you will get the recording and the side hustle curriculum just so you guys can see it for those that you haven't seen it before. So next month, we're going to be talking about icebreakers, energizers, and activities. And if you guys work with youth, you know, even more than adults, that we've got to have all of these transitional kind of activities that happen. We've got to have the energizers when we start losing them. We've got to have those icebreakers that really bring them together and let their guard down. I mean, let them relax a little bit. And so next month, it will be all about that. And then, of course, with activities with young people, that's how we really reinforce the learning. So I just read a study today that said that our young people at age about 14, we have 6 to 8 minutes that we can actually really reach them. Now it says that we have up to 16 to 20 that they may be half engaged. So my goal as a youth trainer for the last 20 years has been to try and do an activity every 10 minutes. So I may teach, they may have to fill something out in their workbook, and then we do a breakout group or we do some sort of activity. And so that means we've got to have a lot in our back pocket ready to go, because we never know the dynamics of the group and we never know how many we're going to need. So that's what we'll be doing next month. So thank you guys so much. I can hang around and see if there are any more questions. I think we've got a couple in here. Yeah, icebreakers, I love them. So we're doing both in person and Zoom icebreakers, and we do a lot of breakout rooms. Let me go look at the date because I have it in my slide. So the date is September 23rd. And if you guys were on here, you will end up getting an email from us telling you when it is. And if you have never gone to or signed up for any of our IDRS webinars, you can go on to nativebiz.org and look at events, and that's where all of our trainings are. So with that, I don't see anything in the chat. So thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Larry, so good to see you. Marlene, I don't think we've met before, but if we can do anything for you, our services with youth are, we basically keep them as inexpensive as possible. We work with everyone's budget. So if you need anything from us, please let us know, because our goal is just to try and help people generate as much income as they can in Indian country. So thanks so much. You guys have a great afternoon. Thank you, Melanie.